Hi there, greetings, good morning, everybody. Want to welcome you all here to the Prog Monster channel. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show. So, we're here with a new series that we're going to start today. This is a new mini series called Where Have I Heard That? Yeah. So, basically, we're going to do 5 episodes over the course of this week, Monday to Friday at noon every day. And the first episode is going to feature Genesis. So their first album, Foxtrot, which is their fourth album, Trick of the Tail, which is their sixth or seventh album. I can't remember which one. Anyways, basically, in this series, what we'll be doing is I picked out 5 albums from 5 different bands that I think very Genesis like. And the other series episodes will be covering, yes, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and Rush, and we'll be doing the exact same thing that we're going to do today for Genesis. So the albums I've picked out from 5 different bands, I think all have a very Genesis quality about them. Some of them actually sound quite a bit like Genesis. Some of them maybe not as much vocally like Genesis, but definitely have a lot of what they would call like a feeling from like a Genesis feeling, or a hint of Genesis, or a sound like Genesis, and the music is very Genesis like. And so I picked out 5 albums. So the first one is going to be the newest one, Big Train's Woodcut. There are at least 4 or 5 tracks on this album that I hear a lot of Genesis in. A very similar sound to that Genesis, especially the keyboard parts, really strongly Genesis sounding. And this album has grown on me quite a bit over the last little bit too because of that. I think a lot of that has to do with repetition, of course. I liked it initially when I first heard it, and then it kind of backed off on it a little bit. I was thinking maybe it's not as good as I thought it was, and then I've been listening to it a lot, and there's a lot of tracks on this album. I think there's like almost 15 or 16, or might even be more than that. I have 10, 15, 16 tracks on here. Really solid album. I like it a lot. Definitely want to give this a listen to if you haven't. So it's a Genesis-like album for me anyways. The next one up is often considered the lost Genesis album. Well, I don't really think that's the case, but there are enough of the Genesis members on this album. This is, sorry, it's hard to see it because it's blue on blue writing. This is Steve Hackett's Voyage of the Acolyte, released in 1975, his first kind of venture into solo work, and this has a lot of stuff on it. The first track especially, and the last track, Shadow of the Hierophant, really sound a lot like Genesis. Just a tremendous amount of Genesis. There's a couple of songs on here also that Phil Collins sings. This is before he took over with Genesis, but he sings on this album, definitely giving it that Genesis feel, even though he sounds different here than he does on the Genesis albums. But this album, very Genesis-like, could have, if they had adopted it and all played on it and arranged it like a Genesis album, could have very easily been another Genesis album. So that's Voyage of the Acolyte, Steve Hackett. Next up is an album that really, I've not thought of this as a Genesis-like album for years, but when I first heard it, when it first came out, I thought, oh my God, it sounds so much like Genesis. And we're talking about Script for a Jester's Tear from Marillion. Now, I know Marillion themselves don't like this comparison and will vehemently deny any sound like Genesis, but come on, really? There's just a real kind of a Genesis feel for this album. I think it's more the instrumental kind of way in which they present the material that really gives them that lends them to that Genesis sound. Not so much specific parts or vocal parts, although, Fish definitely has a Peter Gabriel sound to his voice, at least early on anyways. So this is A Script for a Jester's Tear from Marillion, released back in 1973. Very Genesis-like. Another new wave of British, new wave of British heavy metal. Another neo-prog band from the 1980s that has a very strong Genesis sound to it is this band, IQ. Now, this particular album came out in the after the turn of the century, but Harvest of Souls, Red Dust Shadow, Sacred Sound, You Never Will, Born Brilliant. This is just an absolute killer album. Probably their best album, I think. And definitely has a Supper's Ready feel to it. Very similar to this album here. Very similar to this album. These albums have a lot of similarities. This one's probably a little better produced and sounds a little bit more modern, but definitely has a Genesis feel to it. The next album and the last album on the list is an album released almost the same time period. I think these were both released in 1970. This is Trespass, Genesis' first really kind of Genesis album. And this album sounds a lot like it. You can hear a lot of similarities between Supertramp's debut album and the first kind of real Genesis album. There's a lot of similarities here in their music. Even the vocals sound very similar too, but it's the musical part that goes with it that really captures that Genesis sound. So this is Supertramp's debut album back from 1970. So that's my episode 1 of Where Have I Heard That Before? I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, featuring Genesis, of course. Please hit the like and subscribe. If you want to make any comments about Genesis as a band or some of the albums I've chosen, or even any of the bands that I listed as sounding like Genesis, the Supertramp debut, the IQ Dark Matter, the Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion, Steve Hackett's Voyage of the Acolyte, or the Woodcut album from Big Train, you're more than welcome to do so. You can even list some other albums that you think really have a Genesis flavor to them, but those are the ones that come to mind for me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, so we will see you tomorrow with episode 2, which we will be talking about Yes. So take care, have yourself a good evening, and goodbye here from the Prog Monster.